Hello, Nottingham Forest focus as Nottingham Forest make their return to European competition when they go to Real Betis in the Europa League tomorrow night. A great occasion, but can it bring a first win for Ange Postecoglou? Joining me to give their thoughts, first of all, is Paul Morley, who wasn't wearing that get-up when the music started. And I had to glance from reading out my intro to see that. So thank you for that, Paul. How are you?
Buenos días, amigos. Estoy muy bien, gracias. Bienvenidos a Sevilla, donde hace scorchio.
Oh,
very good, thank you.
Good.
Wow.
What a start.
Just transported to Andalusia there. Beautiful.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll get rid of the get up now and we'll take it seriously.
Bought it all preview if you want. Pete Blackburn, how are you?
Well, I don't even know what to say after that. Absolutely phenomenal. That's really lifted my spirits.
That was pretty mad. Right, we'll get into a match preview and then we'll do a little bit at the end. Pete's got a quiz question, he says, so we'll tag that on, but we'll get cracking. In the intro, Pete, I was going to say long-awaited return to European competition, but it sort of isn't long-awaited because I don't think any of us saw it coming. It feels like it's sprung on us in a very welcome way, this Europa League action. How are you feeling about this game tomorrow night?
Really excited, I think. It just feels like a really, like an amazing occasion, doesn't it? And I'm sort of intrigued to see how I end up feeling tomorrow. I'm not going to the game, sadly, and so I'm not going to have the joy of being out there like you guys are, and I'll be very envious, no doubt. But it does feel like an occasion, so I think I'll be going down to the nav with my father-in-law and having a few beers and being around the atmosphere and stuff, which I guess is probably the second best place you could be if I can't be over there. Yeah, I'm going to be interested to see how I feel. I wonder if it will be emotional or just exciting. And as things stand, it feels incredibly exciting and a real sort of recognition, a moment of recognition, I guess, for everything that we've achieved in recent years. So yeah, it's a hell of a game to start the campaign off with. I mean, if we can come away from Betis with anything points wise, then I think that'll have been a brilliant start to the journey. But it's bigger than that, isn't it? And particularly for you guys who are going out there, it's going to be a really, really special occasion.
Yeah. Well, you're out there, Paul. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm giddy. I honestly can't wait. I've been so excited for this ever since the fixtures came out, and booking the flights sort of within the next half an hour after they came out, and managing to get match tickets last week as well on Monday was just added to the excitement and the feel of it all. Yeah, just really can't wait to get out there. My taxi's booked for, I think it's 5:10 tomorrow morning. So I should be a little bit bleary-eyed, hopefully get a bit of a nap on the plane. But yeah, get to Seville round about 2:30, I think I land at 2:10. So hopefully be in town, collect the tickets from the collection point at about 3:00, and then make my way into town and enjoy the delights that Seville has to offer before heading to the stadium a few hours later.
For people who are going, I think I'm right in saying you've got to have your passport as well to collect your tickets. So, make sure you've got that with you. I hope the British Embassy isn't flooded with people on Thursday morning who've lost their passport in the winning goal melee celebrations that hopefully will occur. But it's something to bear in mind, certainly. Sticking with you, Paul, because you've seen Betis. I don't know if Pete has actually, but you watched their last game, so you're more qualified than me to talk about them as opponents. What did you make of them?
I should caveat it that it was Friday evening after several glasses of wine on the sofa. So in terms of being able to give a concise breakdown of what they're all about, it's probably a bit beyond me. But no, they looked a good side. I think they won 3-1 against Sociedad. More than anything, just struck me the vastness of the stadium that we're going to be in. Obviously, you see pictures of it, and you know that's 60,000-70,000 seats. So you kind of envisage it, but it looked like a real proper venue, and they looked like a real proper team. So I think looking at of all the fixtures that we've got in this competition, safe to say that we're probably kicking off with the hardest one. Which again, from an expectation point of view, given all the stuff that's been going on in the background, makes it quite if you're just talking about the football match, makes it quite a difficult prospect. So I'm going to try as best I can to enjoy the experience and not regardless of the result, because obviously the result will matter. But yeah, they're a good side. I think they sit 4th in the league. They've lost 1 out of 6 games, so obviously they're a difficult team to beat. I think if we can go there and get anything, come away with a point, would represent a fantastic start to the European campaign. So it's going to be a tough challenge, one that the players will be more ready for than I was for that question. So hopefully it's something, we've had enough time to prep, and Andrew's got a game plan that we can go there and say, let's try and get something.
When you look at their squad, Pete, there's a lot of familiar names in it. Obviously, Anthony, I guess, is the one that people would say. Isco's a really good player, but unfortunately he's injured. But they've also got Bellerin, Lo Celso, Amrabat, Fornals, lots of Junior Firpo, lots of Premier League experience, a few other good players like Ricardo Rodriguez, the Swiss left back. Are you taking a point is kind of the question. It feels like the toughest of the games that we have probably in this Europa League campaign. So any points, a positive point in that sense, you think?
Absolutely. I mean, I think first of all, a positive performance would be a good step, because this is a very big occasion. Lots of players who've not done this before, against a very good side who are, as Paul's described, riding pretty high right now. And have been here before. So I think, a positive performance would be a really nice thing. But a draw, I think, would be a really, really decent result. And a really nice platform for the rest of the European campaign. Like you say, loads of Premier League interest in there. Lots of players who've passed through. I think Diego Llorente, he played for Leeds as well, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yes, another one. I mean, the 11 that they look likely to start, from my sort of vague reading of things, is very Premier League heavy. I think from what I can see, it looks like Lo Celso and Pablo Fornals are having a pretty good start to the season, as well as Anthony, obviously. So there'll be plenty of threats in there. I always thought Lo Celso was a really good player, actually, and it just never really quite happened at Spurs. But he's someone who has real bite, and by the looks of the stats this year is pretty outrageous in his progressive passing numbers. So there's threat there. They've also got a chap who I don't think I've actually seen play on the wing, called Ezel Zuli, who is getting real rave reviews for his performances and looks like a hell of a ball carrier. So he's someone to be wary of. I think he'll be playing wide left, so it'll probably be Nico's job to look after him. I mean, the going back to what we spoke about in the post, the yesterday's pod. Are we doing this yesterday? Yeah. We recorded today. It was yesterday. Anthony might have a bit of fun in that space vacated by Zinchenko, so hopefully we don't get embarrassed too much by him. But I think it's gonna be a really good game. I had a look at Betis' sort of various stats for the season so far, and I haven't seen them play this season, unlike Paul. But it looks like they're a really varied side. They come quite high up the lists for lots of stats that you perhaps wouldn't expect to go together. So they're in the top 6 teams in the league or so, I think, for accurate long balls. But they also are one of the more possession-heavy teams, and play a lot, like more than 400 accurate passes a game. So it looks like they're a team that will mix it up a bit. Also, the stats probably suggest that they're going to look to press relatively high. I think they're in the top 3 for interceptions in the final third. You'd expect them to be quite proactive and coming at us, which I think will probably suit us a bit, to be fair, and hopefully give us some room to manoeuvre. So really exciting. I think it's going to be a proper test, and be interesting to see how the players all react to a totally different challenge abroad.
The rise of the long ball is quite interesting. Not for the topic now, because we've got to keep this tight. But the return to teams playing long ball, even Man City against Arsenal, pinging it into Haaland. And I think of course, with these things, there's an article in the Athletic about it that I haven't read yet, but I did see a headline about the return of the long ball. There is an opposition preview that will be out. If you remember, you've already got it. If you're not, you'll get it tomorrow with a Spanish football commentator. Well, he's not Spanish. He commentates on Spanish football, Tim Lee, and he talks more about those players. Particularly Anthony, who's quite an interesting one after his struggles. And the other thing I was going to say is their touring Premier League interest, their manager is Manuel Pellegrini, who's been there for 5 years.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stability there, to be fair. So a lot of Premier League connections. Right, we should get onto our lineups momentarily. Just before we do, a final reminder. The game is on the big screens at the NAV. Get there early to be in with your chance of a free pint of Madri before 7 p.m, although it is happy hour between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m, so you'll get discounted beers anyway, and then you can watch the game, as Pete is doing, on the big screens, indoors or outdoors, and enjoy what should be a historic evening and an occasion for celebration. even without the result, but obviously the result helps a lot. Right, let's get into a couple of teams. I say a couple because Pete's and Paul's was the same. So I shall put that on screen, read it out, and they can talk through it and probably tell me where I've got this wrong. Sales in goal, Williams, Milenkovic, Murillo, Zinchenko, if he's available and has been registered. I'll ask them around that if he's not. Douglas Luiz and Anderson in midfield. Bakwa, Gibbs White, Hudson Odoi in behind Igor Jesus. Paul, kick us off with your thinking.
Yeah, I think just first on the Zinchenko thing, I think we all expect him to be added to the Europa League squad. I think the message that came out in, I think there's an article, I can't remember who it was it John Percy or somebody else last week, saying that Forest can add him, but we were going to wait until after the Burnley game just to make sure, obviously, you know, in case somebody got an injured who was added, then obviously you can't then replace that person. So it makes perfect sense to wait until after the Burnley game before we add whoever it is that can take Aina's place. Assuming it's Zinchenko, then I think that back four pretty much picks itself. It was interesting actually at the weekend against Burnley how Savona was not among the subs. Don't know if you read too much into that or it was just the way that Ange wanted to set up, but clearly that suggests that, you know, he's got a very, very clear first choice fullback pairing with Aina out, and I think that, you know, that makes sense. In terms of the rest of the team, a few sort of decisions to make. I think again Anderson and Luiz picked themselves, as do the centre backs if Murillo's fit, and I guess it's in the forward areas where you've got the most sort of contentious or most decisions to make. First on Gibbs White, I would personally stick with him. I think somebody made a comment, I think it might have been you, Pete, on yesterday's show about the preference would be, or it might have been actually on the post-match show, the preference would be to stick with Gibbs White and play him into form rather than drop him. McAtee obviously has got a shout to come in, particularly given that Gibbs White's had a fair bit of football of late. So it'd be interesting to see what Ange does. And then in terms of the striker, I went with Igor Jesus partly to sort of because I think he's earned it in terms of what he's shown at Swansea in the first half and when he came on against Burnley. I also think Sunderland on Saturday is probably more of a Chris Wood type game with the likes of Dan Ballard and big guys like that who are going to be up against a physical battle. And I think that's one where Wood's experience will come in. So partly with an eye on playing Chris Wood against Sunderland, I think we're going to have to start rotating these guys, particularly Chris Wood, as the games come thick and fast. So Jesus got the nod for me over Callum Wendo. And then in the wide positions, Bakwa and Ndoi is pretty much a toss-up. I guess the one thing you could say is that Ndoi has probably got a bit more experience in European style football. Obviously, played in the Euros with Switzerland, so arguably he may be a bit more akin to sort of big games, big occasions, which you might want to put him in. For me, I'd be happy with either. And I just think Callum Hudson-Odoi, I think there's a lot of narrative been going around about Hudson-Odoi being out of form in the last few weeks, which I think is a little bit unfair. I think he had looked really bright against Brentford, scored a really good goal against Palace, obviously had a poor game against West Ham, as did everybody. And I think there's probably, in hindsight, there was extenuating circumstances with what was going on in the background which maybe explained that. And then the next game is Arsenal, where he's playing, instead of playing with Williams, he's playing with Morato for the bulk of the first half, and it's a partnership that he's not used to, and he's clearly not getting the same type of link-up play with Morato that he would used to with Williams. And then I think when he came on Saturday against Burnley, he was he looked positive, he looked bright, and sort of influenced the game and helped us get up the pitch. So for me, I think out of all the wingers, Hudson-Odoi would still be my kind of number one pick, with the other two or three, sort of obviously two in Europe with Hutchinson not in the squad, fighting it out for the other side. So yeah, that was my thinking. Don't know if that's similar to Pete's or not, but
just before I throw it to Pete, one bit of injury news that I should have mentioned on yesterday's podcast and isn't even relevant to this game, but if I don't mention it, I'll forget about it. Jai Cunha posted a photo of himself in a boot playing PlayStation or whatever, so he might well have picked something out, which is why he might not have been involved against Burnley. He can't be involved in this game anyway because he's not in the squad, but I thought I'd mention it there. Pete, pick up from what Paul was saying. What were the big choices for you?
Well, on Cunha, I'd just say I don't necessarily think there's something to worry about. I think those boots are one of the various tools that are used for players when they're away from the
Yeah,
club.
you see people. Yeah, Bruno Fernandes was pictured in one last season and on crutches, and
speeding up muscle recovery and all that sort of stuff. I think
Yeah,
it's pretty normal to have all that, and your home ice baths and all that sort of business these days. So I wouldn't necessarily worry about that. On the team, I think Paul's discussed it perfectly well. Personally, I'm not that convicted about it. It could be quite a different team, and I wouldn't have any issue with it. So I'm looking forward to seeing what you've picked, Matt. I think the back four, it just feels like it picks itself. I'm not really sure where else you'd go with it. So that felt pretty obvious to me. I think for this first game, and given this is against a team that I expect to be possibly the hardest opposition, although Porto, I think, are flying as well. I think the midfield three also felt pretty obvious to me personally. There will be, I think, a place for Sangare playing in Europe. But in this one, I really wanted to pick a team that I felt could look after the ball really well, and that when we won the ball, we'd be able to keep it and try and bring an element of control and fluency to the game. And I think that's the same for the wingers as well. I mean, we've got three wingers plus McAtee, I guess, who are going to need to rotate to some degree in Europe, particularly the three. And it made sense to me to leave Ndoye out for this one. I think we'll need him more against Sunderland in a game where we're going to play a team that'll probably be camped in somewhat, and he's someone who can pop up in the box with a goal, and I think a real threat in that sense. So I thought he'd be more useful for that one. And these two wingers, I think Hudson-Odoi has always been a bringer of control for Forest. He's someone who looks after the ball really well, and he can get you at the pitch and keep it. And in a game where we might really need calm heads, this is a new experience for the club, for the fans, for the players. And I think having players who can look after the ball and give us some time to get up the pitch and to play our way is it feels like a really good option to me. And I think that's what those two wingers represent. When it comes to Jesus, I just think he's really earned it, to be honest. And you're going to have to rotate those three strikers, partly because we've got a lot of games and partly because they've all got really good shouts to be playing football. So for this one, Jesus made sense. I think, again, for all the sort of control elements that I talked about, he's someone who drops in, he keeps the ball really well, he works really, really hard. I think he'll be able to give us a bit of everything, really, in that position. And also, he's shown that his finishing is pretty sharp if the moments come. So I think he'll link well with the players around him nicely, and he'll give us a chance to keep the ball and take any of the sort of potential sort of frantic side of things out of the game if there is any of that in a new environment, a new experience. So that's where I'm at with it. But honestly, I think it could be 4, 5, 6 players different, and I wouldn't necessarily be concerned. And I'm sure there'd be other reasoning that makes sense. But yeah, we need a bit of rotation, but probably not too much for me at this point.
Cool. My team's slightly different, only slightly different, and I'm not wedded to it. And actually, maybe this is more of an eye on Midtjylland, and I'll explain the thinking while I've just made a couple of changes. Cells, I've got Savona in, Milenkovic, Murillo, Williams, Douglas Luiz, Anderson, Gibbs White, Bakwa and Ndoye, and then Igor Jesus up front. And then the thinking is it's more around condition of players and a couple in particular. Zinchenko's not played a lot of football in the last year, and we very much need him to stay fit. So again, this comes down to the medical guys more than me, but Zinchenko is going to need a rest, I think, in the next 3 games, and maybe Midtjylland is the one. But he played against Swansea, he played against Burnley. I'm going to say a heavy pitch, like Pete or Dan said, a woke pitch, where it seemed to actually hold up quite well. And then he might play this game, and then we've got a very big game against Sunderland. So can Zinchenko play all those games? I don't know. The medical guys will know. So I'm just curious as to whether we leave him out and play Savona, who I've said before, I'm not yet convinced, but I've only seen him play 2 games, so it'd be very premature to judge him. So I wouldn't have a problem him playing, and I would back him, obviously. And then the wingers, same thinking with Zinchenko and Hudson-Odoi. I want Hudson-Odoi to play v Sunderland. I think he's exactly what Paul said. I think he's been slightly over-maligned, and I thought he did well when he came on against Burnley. And in this Ange system, it seems like he's got to track back a lot more, which I think will put more emphasis on his body. So again, he's going to need a rest at some point. So is it this game and you make sure he's right for Sunderland? because as Pete said, these players are going to have to rotate. And then I would like Chris Wood to play against Sunderland as well, for the reasons Paul said. They get the ball in the box a lot. They are good from set pieces. Ballard is an absolute machine for heading the ball. I don't know if he's a Premier League quality defender, but he's a weapon. So I think we need a physically big team in that game. And then I'd be making early subs around. I still think Louise needs a bit of time to bed in 60 minutes and then keep building him up. So I think Sangare might well start or might well come on after an hour. But it'll be really interesting to see how it goes. Just on that rotation principle then, Paul, this isn't a game where you would heavily rotate. You would look at Midtjylland, or are you... Because it's difficult to know how strong you go in these games, but we're going to have to use the squad, aren't we?
Yeah, and I think that's why I would try and go strong in this game to get something on the board, because I think then that potentially earns you the right to do a bit of rotation when it comes to your Midtjyllands and your Malmos and whoever else that we come up against. Because if we approach this game not lightly, I think that's not obviously we're not going to approach it lightly. But if we have a lot of change and we end up getting beat 2 or 3-0, let's say. Then that really puts the pressure on. We need to get a result at home against Midtjylland. So I don't think this. I've said before, this is definitely not going to be an easy game, whoever you pick. But I think to give ourselves the best chance of getting a positive result in this game, and then, as I say, creating a scenario where we perhaps could rest players against the likes of Midtjylland and others, would involve kind of going with near enough your strongest team for this game, but as I said, with the likes of Chris Wood and 1 or 2 others, an eye on Saturday. So yeah, it's really difficult. I think, and I don't know whether we're going to get a chance to touch on it in any great detail, but I think one of the biggest challenges that Ange's got over the next 3 or 4 months is going to be how he manages the fullbacks. And obviously, you put Savona in there for exactly that reason. If you think of the other two, Zinchenko and Williams, we've got something like 30 odd games in the next 19 weeks up to the end of, or I think the team's got 27, 28 games in that time. But in that time, they're going to have World Cup qualifiers where, they are 2 guys who go away with Wales, go away with the Ukraine, play pretty much 90 minutes every time they do that. I think there's four international games between in the next couple of months. So, they're potentially looking at a game every 4 days for the next 3 or 4 months if they play every game, which I'm sure they're not going to. So with Aina missing and only Savona as the other recognised fullback, that's going to be a real challenge as for how Ange manages that and what games he picks and rotates people in, because he's going to have to do that if we're going to have any hope of keeping them all fit and getting them through that period until potentially Aina might not come back, as we've said before, until even the end of January, if he sort of walks off the treatment table or straight onto the plane to AFCON, which I'm sure Nigeria will want him if he's anything like sort of 80-90% fit. So that's going to be a real challenge. And yeah, it'd be fascinating to see how we negotiate that, how Ange negotiates that in the coming months.
Have you got one eye on Sunderland, Pete, when it comes to? It's almost a bit like the FA Cup versus Premier League, which is the bigger game in a sense. They're both very big, but would you have one eye on Sunderland team selection wise if you were Ange?
Honestly, no, I don't think so at this stage of the season. I think maybe it's a bit of a cop out because I don't want to answer your question about prioritisation, but I think these games are both enormously significant for very different reasons. And we're at a stage of the season now where we should be able to put out the majority of what we feel like is a first choice team without it being a significant issue right now. The rotation thing is, I think, going to be a really underrated difficulty that the management team face, and that I guess we all face in terms of how we react to it and that sort of thing. My instinct is that you probably can't plan it an awful lot. I think you would probably like to, but that's. We've had an alarm and a dog. I think there's that. What's that saying? That the best laid plans fail at first contact with the enemy. That's sort of how I feel about rotation with these sorts of things, because it only takes one adverse result in one of these games for you to have to shelve all those plans about bringing in different players for a different moment or whatever, and it can change a lot. So I think it's going to be a case of sort of doing it on the hoof a little bit, and maybe ideally sort of bringing in 2 or 3 changes for quite a lot of games rather than wholesale changes for some. Maybe that's how you'll do it, and I think you can get away with that now, given that we've got areas of the pitch where I think we all feel that the drop off isn't significant like it was before. So that's probably how I'd be looking at it. I think you're gonna have to be reactive as a management team, and you can have all the plans you want, but I suspect they'll often go out of the window.
Yeah, I think so. I think Paul's back. I do. I mean, I know you don't engage with the question, but I do think if I could only choose one game to win this week, it would still be Sunderland for me. Paul, and go on, Pete. Go on. Sorry.
No, I think it's hard to disagree with that because, and I think it would be different if the context around the game was different. I think if we didn't have this big feeling of negativity that we sort of discussed at length on yesterday's pod, then maybe I'd have a different answer for it. But it does feel like a result in the Sunderland game could be quite pivotal to how people see the situation we're in, how we're all interacting with the team, and also to giving the team and the manager a bit of breathing space and just calm down the media slightly and the questions from fans and whatever. So I think that's probably quite hard to disagree with. And I think, also you guys are going to have a fantastic European trip regardless of the result. And obviously the result is important and great, but it's still a celebration of where we are. And there's lots more games in Europe that are going to be more in our favour, hopefully. So, yeah, I think it's hard not to agree with you, really.
Paul, any final words on the game before we do Pete's quiz to wrap things up?
No, I think I view this game very much in a similar context to when we were in the FA Cup semi-final last season. It was kind of, a great occasion. It's going to be a fantastic experience to be there. And obviously we want a positive result, but if it doesn't happen, then the game that comes after it, the weekend, is more important. As I can't remember who it was now, but whatever the league game was that followed that semi-final, it might have been Brentford, wasn't it? Which obviously didn't go very well. At the time was felt more important, and I think it's a similar sort of context of going into these two games. So yeah, I agree with your sentiment that the Sunderland game, if you're going to pick one to get 3 points in, then it's the Sunderland one.
Yeah, and the difference here is we can lose to Betis and still win the Europa League, obviously. Yeah. And there's lots of good games to come, lots of exciting games to come. I'm just trying to scroll back and see who it was that we played. Was it Man United? No, I've gone back too far. Right, I'll look at that later. Pete, what is your quiz that you wanted to do?
It's quick. It's a quick one. If you guys bring up the goods, I've only managed to find two players that have had spells at Forest and Betis, and I wondered if you could guess the names. One of them pretty recent and very gettable, and the other one a bit more of a stretch. And I can give you some clues if you're struggling.
It was that Brentford game, by the way, so I had to just look. Gosh, I think I might need a clue.
So one of them was in last season's squad.
For us?
Yeah.
Crikey.
No.
My instinct, my first guess was going to be Rafa Mir. I don't know if
that's not right, but it's a nice idea.
Okay.
So the player from last season's squad is no longer at Forest. He was a temporary addition.
Not Montiel.
No. You're in the right sort of profile of footballer. Fullback. No, who's better than Montiel and less controversial?
Man. Fullback.
What's his face? Left back. Alex Moreno.
Yes.
Of course. Of course. Who we tried to sign from Betis. Yeah, lots. Yeah.
That doesn't bode particularly well for the other one, which is quite a lot harder.
Okay, give us an era.
I'm pretty sure. I hope I don't get this wrong now. I think he signed for Forest under Philippe Montagnier. So we're talking sort of 2016, I guess. Something like that.
It could be anyone. There's so many players.
Nationality?
He's a Frenchman.
Perkis? Damien Perkis?
Very good. Well done. Yeah, he played 32 games for Betis before moving to Toronto, where we signed him from. I was sort of surprised, but I didn't realise he played at such a high level.
No, I wouldn't never have got that without the clue. The Frenchman thing, yeah.
Very good.
Right. Is he still playing? Oh, he's 41. Gosh.
I think I looked him up. I think he's a assistant manager or coach somewhere in France, I think.
Oh, well, fair play to him, yeah.
Just the other stat of interest I found, or somebody mentioned on Betis the other day. I think it might have been your man actually on your podcast, the Spanish commentator. They're one of only 8 clubs, is it, to have won La Liga?
Yeah.
Nice.
Not since the 30s. Yeah. There's some interesting
they're
stuff.
A proper storied football club, aren't they? And I've always had a soft spot for Betis because they were. I went to Seville some years ago and loved it, and then decided I must have a Seville team. I think the Sevilla are the sort of team of the aristocrats, and Betis are the team of the working man in Seville. So
yeah, I think they are. In the podcast that Tim's on, he's talking about a mass exodus from Andalusia in the 60s and how that spread all the fan base and all that stuff. It's quite interesting around that. Yeah, certainly. Right, a shorter preview, but I've got a plane to catch. So I appreciate these guys helping me out in both pods today. Back tomorrow with the post-match show, assuming everything works technology-wise from Seville. So do join us for that. It's myself and Adam Summerton and hopefully Lewis or another, but I'll try and get a second voice for that. So do join us. If you've enjoyed this, do us a favor, hit like, hit subscribe, do consider membership or Patreon or a lovely 5-star review on Apple or Spotify. Does that video not show up for you guys for ages? Did it just not appear?
It came up for me, I think.
Yeah, it's fine. There was one you did earlier that took ages to load for me, but yeah, it was fine.
Took ages to load for me then as well. Don't know what's going on. I invested in the fastest Wi-Fi I could get, and it's made absolutely no difference apart from my bank balance. So there you go. Paul Morley, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I look forward to hopefully meeting up with you in Seville in the next few days, and indeed all the other Forest fans that are going to be there. Can't wait. Look forward to it.
Oh yeah, of course. If you see us, say hello to Paul and to me. Don't say hello to Greg and Thames. They're our souls in real life. They won't like that at all. No, do say hello to anyone you see from the pod. Fodders is there as well. Pete Blackburn, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, and safe travels to you both. I hope you have a cracking time. I'm expecting to get a couple of nice photos from you, Paul, if you in that gear with a beer on.
Yeah, promised it.
A nice glass of red. Right, thanks very much, everyone. A big thanks to Pete and Paul. Heroic effort this Monday morning, which has lapsed into Monday afternoon as we record this, doing 2 pods back-to-back around their work. I mean, Paul's got a job. I'm yet to be convinced that Pete has. But thanks very much to these lads. And if we don't see you tomorrow, we shall see you soon.